Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Fight for Our Freedom Radio. And I'm your host, Badbaby, accompanied by my co-host, Robert Pepino. And tonight we're just going to be chit-chatting along here about current events and things that have been going on. And also I'm going to tell you a little bit about some photos that were sent to me that were pretty astonishing. And you're my brother, too.
We are all brothers and sisters of this world and the universe, my dear. And
Yes, we are.
Yeah, we definitely are. And it's so unfortunate that so many people have been thrown under that illusion of the material world. Because look at the astonishing events that have taken place, within the last 10 days or so. Unreal. Unreal. You know.
Well, before we get started about current events, I want to give a shout-out to my other two brothers, Steve Olson and Dave Dobbs, for their compliments that they gave me on their video tonight. I have not heard them, but my guests told me about them, and I love those two guys so much. I love them all.
Well, very nice.
There's not enough Badbaby to go around, is there?
I guess not. You know what? That's a wonderful thing, because compliments only really are telling of who you are, what you're made of, what's inside you. You know, and that's the beauty of it. It's not, when most people give compliments, other than Hollywood celebrities, because that's all an illusion. When we're talking about basic human-to-human contact and it's more than contact. When we're genuine about what we are all in this truth movement for, when someone gives a genuine compliment, it's because it's deserving and it's wanted and it needs to be acknowledged, because we're all helping to serve a greater purpose of what we're all about. So that's wonderful. I'm really glad to hear that Steve did that, actually, to tell you the truth.
Well, Steve has really been like a brother to me. Me and him have both had long conversations on the phone, and we have both cried. Let's admit, we
and that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's an excellent thing. I mean, crying is it's a release of things that we all have, within us that we've held in for a long time. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is related to that specific person. What it means is an accumulation of, it could be pent-up aggressions, could be an accumulation of hurt that you've had in your life. It could be a whole lot of things. It could be.
I believe when a person cries, it's not because you're showing weakness. You're showing that you've been strong too long.
Well, we're right, and that's the point I was getting to. Is that we all want to be strong. We all want to be brave for the other people in our lives that have come and gone. But that reality shows that when you break down, that you are as human as anybody else, and you just have a stronger resistance. I don't want to say to let go, because that's not really the right word. It's to acknowledge the existence of the passing of another consciousness, which it's simply just shedding of the skin, right? And then we reunite on the other side, and then guess what? We get to come back and do it all over again, because repetition is insanity anyway. But repetition. I was just kidding. I mean, repetition in that sense is about an accumulation of knowledge, and that's what it really comes down to. So we've all of us, you, me, and everybody listening to this program right now, and everybody in the chat, and please join in on this thought process. It's an accumulation of knowledge that we inherently understand in this physical 3D life, right? And then we take that to the other side and say, well, and then we ask ourselves the questions, because there's no judges, there's no juries, and none of that stuff. It's just an accumulation of knowledge, and then we answer to ourselves. What did we learn? Did we do this right? Did we do this wrong? Could I have done this better? Could I maybe have done something a little different? It comes to those nuances that accelerate our consciousness to the next, the physical or non-physical, because I don't know, I can't tell you that, but physical or non-physical plane of existence. But consciousness is the universe. Consciousness is everything. Consciousness is what makes the universe expand. Consciousness is what allows us to grow as these, I've said, I don't know if I've said this to you before, Badbaby, in an analogy, putting it in a form of an analogy. But if you take, a one-celled organism, right? And let's say the universe is that one-celled organism. Well, there are hundreds of millions of, hundreds of billions, actually, of atoms and electrons and neutrons and protons within that cellular structure. And they all know how and why and where and when to do. So when that one-celled organism divides, it becomes separate of itself, but yet it's still the same, right? So it splits, and it creates 2, and then it creates 4, and then it creates 8, right? And this is how everything, at least as far as I understand, develops and grows on, in this 3-dimensional plane called Earth. But I think that is salient throughout the universe. And this is the thing that I think we need to understand, that we are not separate and apart, but we are as one, understanding that when we separate, and this is the really hard part to explain from my point of view always, you say, okay, well, when you divide from yourself, are you still yourself, or you are a separate individual from the self that just split, but still understanding the same thing? That's always the dilemma. So you become a separate individual, but yet you are still connected as one. Well, you could take an example as simple as this. What about twins and triplets and quadruplets and quintuplets, right? In many cases, you have these, let's just use twins, okay? They're born usually within minutes of each other. They're identical and sometimes not identical. But here's the difference in that, is that, and I've heard this over and over and over again, which leads me to believe this, that they feel exactly what the other one feels. So are we separate, or are we separate only in physical, but existing in either in the etherical and physical, because we're living the physical world, right? But they feel, if one gets hurt, the other one feels pain. They don't know why they feel pain. They call the other twin and say, did something just happen to you? And they say, well, yeah, I just, I had an accident. Oh, where'd you have the accident? Well, I hurt my hand. Well, yeah, I had a pain in my hand. So there's a physical connection to the separation of the twins.
If one passes away, the other one, if they don't know it yet, they feel or sense the overwhelming loss.
Exactly.
Yes, there is a connection there.
Exactly. So that's the basis of this thought process, is that we are all connected, every one of us. Even though we don't realize it, like, when I first, found out about your show and talked to you and had a chance to connect with you and being on the show, there was always a connection. Though the connection is not very clear to us at the moment it's happening, we know that the connection is being made. We don't know why it's being made, but we are physically making that connection, right? And again, that leads to the idea that, there are no coincidences in life. Everything happens for a reason. For anybody, the idea of what science pushes, and I know I'm just going to kind of go off a little on the left side here. When scientists say, well, everything is random and it just happened that way, that's nonsense. There's no such thing as that, okay? Because if that were true, then everything and anything would be a miscombobulated menagerie of twisted formations. If that's an analogy I can use. Everything has a place and a reason for it to be in its certain place. Now, whether you call it divinity, whether you call it core source, or whether you call it your higher conscious mind, which is part of core, or core gave you the same thing that it has, which enables you to recreate the same thing that it gave us, well, that's not coincidence. That's enlightenment. That is cohesion. That is a weave that fits perfectly within itself as it expands on its own architecture. And it's so hard to put these things in words because I truly don't think there are words that we can use to describe what core and consciousness and God we can use it in the religious sense, we can use it in the spiritual sense, or we can use it in just a natural sense of the word. There are no words to describe what we understand as consciousness. We know we exist, right? We think, we breathe, we can create, right? These are core beliefs or understandings that we know to be true to say, I am here. Why are you here? Because I physically exist. These are the core values of consciousness. I am here, I know I'm here, and I can touch, feel, taste, smell, and then of course the emotional, the love, the anger, the hate, the divisiveness of people, So we sit here and try and look at our core essence of what we are. What is this creation called consciousness? Well, there could be no coincidence. It's not a random accident of happy accidents that,
right.
The left science
when
wants
I went
to tell
the
you.
Conference, a few people of the guests that I had met, after the conference, we were sitting in the tavern downstairs at the hotel, and we were just sitting talking, and it was like we all knew each other for a long time. And in fact, the one man that bought me dinner, he said, God, he goes, I can't believe how easy it is to talk to you. He goes, like I've known you forever. So, I thought, yeah, there was a big connection between us all.
And you're so right about that. And, it's always the ones who come into this with their arms wide open, not knowing what to expect, but for the most part, they're fearful. They think that it's some sort of obscure. I don't know. I don't want to use the word magical. They think it's some obscure process that only we know about. Now they've come to understand, right? But in reality, everybody actually understands this and know this, but they've been so inundated by the materialistic viewpoint of life. You got to have the job, and you got to have the car, and you got to have the house, and then you got to have this and that and that. It's to keep you in a distracted ideology, so you don't have that core ideology. So in other words, they try and rip it away from you, that core ideology of what you are. what life is about. What is this understanding, this thing called life? They keep you distracted with everything else. And then the moment you say, you know what, I'm not really interested in that stuff anymore. I want to know who I am, what I am, why am I here? The whole world opens up to them. And believe me, it's always, it's like anything else. Remember 9/11? Everything,
How could I forget 9/11?
Yeah,
dear?
right. But especially me, and I'll just give it to you from my point of view. When I realized that 9/11 was a big hoax and a fraud, what's the first thing that hits you? Fear. Fear of what? Fear of your government.
Mad. I wasn't afraid. I was mad.
I was definitely mad.
I was angry that they would do that to innocent people. That's just, and then lie to us and want us to buy this big gamut of lies.
Right. Exactly. But fear was the first thing for me, and you're braver than I am because you just went right past fear to angry. I went through fear, then confusion, then I went to mad, then I went to really angry. Okay, so I went through that process. I was like, all right, so what's going? And then you're like, all of a sudden you understand like what this is like. World War II all over again. The Nazi Inquisition taking away the Jews. I mean, all these things start to run through your head. You look at them logically because of what you've read throughout your lifetime and the process of which governments do to people, right? So you go through that whole fear-based thing, and then you get to angry, and then you get to really mad. So this is part of the process that everybody has to kind of go through to get to their higher conscious enlightenment. And it really is. I mean, if your whole life has been based on materialism, right? Oh, I got to have the new clothes because I got to look as good as my friends, and I got to have the new car.
The Hollywood elite are in that category, and what's interesting about that is that they don't live very long, do they? They live in the fast lane and the material lane, but actually they're not happy, and their lifespan isn't very long either. If you research it, am I correct?
Well, I will give you this, that for the ones who are totally engrossed in the materialism, you're absolutely correct. But then there are those guys like Clint Eastwood, right, who listen to what this guy has said in the past. He and Charlton Heston, who was side by side with Clint Eastwood, says From My Cold Dead Hands. Guys like that, right, who understood and still understand what our country was based on, what our forefathers tried to create. And we'll get off the spiritual aspect of this for a second. But it's guys like that who understood that what our country was founded on was freedom. The ideals that our forefathers created was independence, freedom, the right to your own happiness, your freedom without any infringement from any government. Well, you know what? Our government has done what every other government on the planet has done because of course, the materialistic bankers and their notion of their one world or new world order, which is basically, fascism, or even more so, it's not even. It goes much deeper than fascism, because Mussolini's the one who basically created the word fascism. When state and corporate entities merge, they create fascism. Well, communism is the absolute of all that. So guys like Clint Eastwood and many others out there and Clint Eastwood's been a big proponent of speaking up against the fascist, governments around the world. And where are most governments in the world, by the way? They're fascism or communistic in a sense. Look, the biggest power right now is China. All their exports are going out all over the world. Yet they have slave wages paying $2, $3 a day in these factories, and these kids, and I mean kids, 15, 16 years old, right? Working 16 hours a day, 12 hours a day, working 6 to 7 days a week. Well, that's communism. That's fascism. Yet, who are gaining from this? The governments. And it's always been the same. It's the governments who are in control of this whole thing, and it's us. It always comes from the ground up. Who is going to stop all this? When people talk about freedom, when they talk about individual freedom, they don't put deep thought into it. It's just they're following a narrative that sounds good, but are they doing anything to free themselves from that narrative? They'll go and rally, they'll hold the signs up, they'll protest, but that doesn't make any real change, no physical change. It's just it is a projection of an illusion created, that, of course, the fascist and communist governments love to promote on camera, and they do this all the time. They put it in our faces. Well, there was an uprising. Remember Tiananmen Square? How many people were killed there? Remember, Occupy Wall Street? That's never changed. Nothing changed. Nothing has changed. The only way things are ever going to change is from the ground up. And I hate to say this, but this is the absolute truth. And for any of you listening, you can call me a nut. You can call me whatever you want. That's fine.
Well, right on, Just Six. I'm self-governed too. But let's kind of talk a little bit about what's going on, Robert. I was going to kind of lead into this, is what's going on. That's where I was getting to. So here's a perfect example: Santa Rosa, California. These people actually, a lot of them burned. I watched a live news feed where the sheriff was saying that they are recovering bodies. Some are intact, some are burned to cinders. Mm-hmm. How in the world could something like this happen with the technology that we have nowadays, that these people didn't even have time to flee from their homes? Now, you can't tell me they didn't know that fire was blowing into that neighborhood and that they couldn't have warned these people to get out way ahead of time.
Well, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, you guys can throw at it what you want, but it's called complacency. We have all been subjected to the brainwashing here in this country that we are the best, that we have all the technology in the world to do everything and anything. We can put out, all the fires, and we can deal with all the hurricanes. But what's happened recently? You just said it. People have lost their lives. People have lost their lives in the hurricanes. Cities have been decimated, especially Houston, right, with Harvey. Yet
they aren't even talking about Harvey.
Of course not.
Have you heard anything about Harvey?
Of course not. It's all out of the news. This is what the propaganda news stream networks do. They'll show you this is the devastation, and all of a sudden it happens, and all these people, and I guarantee you, all those people who they were talking about that back then a month ago are still in the same situation right now. But that's out of our minds because this is how the mainstream media works, the mainstream propaganda press. They put the carrot out in front of the horse, but the horse never gets to eat the carrot, right? He just keeps trotting on, hoping to get the carrot. That's the reality of it. They always dangle that carrot in front of you, and this is why the alternative media is so important, because they don't let go of the subject. They keep with it, and they say, look, this isn't over. It hasn't ended. But the problem is that 90%, and this is God's honest truth, 90% of the United States feels like they're above the rest of the world. And you know why? Because of the propaganda of the mainstream press. It's all about fashion. It's all about who's looking good. It's all about what's next. It's all about can I get some of that? And, the next best thing. And 5 minutes later, it's out of everybody's mind. Well, the reality is it's not out of everybody's mind. We just want to pretend it is. It's pretentious, pretending. When are we going to wake up and say, our country's in deep trouble? We have a better part of 23 to 24% unemployment. Most of the factories are still shutting down. Unfortunately, and I was very happy to call him my president, but I don't know what to call him anymore. Either he's been completely controlled by the deep state, which I think that's exactly what's happened. Okay? He's boxed in.
He sure has changed his tune, hasn't he?
He sure in the hell has. Or he's been drugged or whatever, which that's really, in my opinion, a little far-fetched. I think he's just trying to survive his first term in office. That's what I think. I think he came into this thing thinking, as a businessman, because I understand that, I'm going to turn this whole thing around. And then he came to slowly realize that the swamp drained him, unfortunately. Remember, throughout his campaign, we're going to drain the swamp, we're going to drain the swamp. Well, yeah, I didn't think that was going to happen, but unfortunately, it's drained him. So it's either one of two things. He either survives this or he ends up as JFK. Now, and this is what I was talking about earlier about the ground up. It's everything, excuse me, everything is a ground up movement. You remember a little guy named Gandhi? A little, 5'2" guy. He was nobody. He was just a lawyer, an Indian lawyer, who wasn't even allowed to ride on his own trains in this country because the British Empire said, this is your country, but you can't ride on your train because, we rule over you. Well, he had a problem with that. And that problem grew for him because he decided that his country and his nation and his people needed to be free. One little man, one little Indian man. This is not too long ago. This was in the 1920s, 1930s. Okay, until he was assassinated in 40, I think it was 42 or 43. I can't remember right now. He was able to kick the British Empire out without violence, though there was massive violence from his own people, no less. And why did that violence come from his own people? Because they were being paid. Once you remove that, the government, the pay, you remove that, and it's all about equality of life and quality of life, you soon realize that all this other crap that I was talking about, the materialism, which I mentioned earlier, means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. We are in the same position right now as India was. And I thought Trump was our Gandhi. But being a billionaire, being with the players that he has played with, and a lot of these pedophiles, which he is known, unfortunately, not to say he is, because I don't think he is in any way, shape, or form, but he is being drained by that swamp. So it still has to come from the ground up. The only way this comes from the ground up, unfortunately, and I'm going to say this, and I've said it before, there's a revolution brewing in this country because people are sick and tired of being manipulated, lied to, being told that they have to be politically correct, being told what they can and what they cannot do on their own property, their own land, being extorted by a government which is completely corrupt, by a system called the IRS, which was implemented by the Federal Fake Express Reserve, to collect their fictitious, worthless notes. Not money, notes, okay, which is called debt, okay, to serve them. What do I mean by serving them? We work our asses off, right? You, me, and everybody else have worked our asses off our whole life to ink out a living. To just say, you know what, I want to have my own little piece of happiness. I want to have my own little bit of reality before I depart from this physical plane till I have to go to someplace else to go do this again. But the reality is they won't even give us that. And this is what they keep pushing us to, and they push more and more and more. And that brings me to the Las Vegas shooting, and that's current event. Now, once again, they have pushed us to the brink. 515 people injured, okay? That means being struck by a bullet or maybe just having some sort of injury because they were pushed down or whatever into the hustle and bustle of trying to get out of there. And by the way, they locked all the gates down. And do you know this? Do you remember this? They turned the lights on. Could you imagine? There's fires.
To give them a better view.
Yeah, exactly. There's fire. There's arms fire being shot and heard. Okay, and whoever this person was who turned the lights on says, well, let the shooters have a better look at what they're shooting at. So you got 58 people dead, 515 people injured, and you see multiple videos. Not one, not two, not three. We're talking tens and tens of videos, okay? Because everybody has those, instant cell phones, videos in their hand. You can hear multiple people saying it wasn't just the Mandalay Bay, it wasn't just Bellagio, and it wasn't just the Tropicana. There must have been at least 5 shooters, okay, to create that kind.
I do not myself believe that this man that they say did all this, I don't believe he had anything to do with any of it. I think he was a patsy.
Of course. Can you say Lee Harvey Paddock? Instead of Steve Paddock, just say Lee Harvey Paddock, because that was just another patsy used for his family. I remember the little interview that his brother gave. He knows nothing about weapons. He doesn't know this. He doesn't know this. All of a sudden, the story changes. Now he almost says he's an arms dealer and he's connected and all kinds of crazy stuff, right? This is just...
and I don't want to, how in the world, all those guns and what was up there in his hotel room, there is no way an average Joe could have got all that up there. It was put up there by somebody who was allowed to put it up there.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's called a patsy, right? I mean, you want to talk about the police state? Las Vegas is the police state. Within every hotel and every street light and cameras everywhere, it is the police state. I mean, they have 100 cameras on you on 5 blackjack tables to make sure you're not cheating, to make sure you're not ripping it off, when in actuality, that's another story. They're all ripping us off, but I can go down that road as well. But the reality is that with all these cameras everywhere, right, there's not one bit of footage of this Steve Paddock bringing his firearms in. And it would have been multiple trips. It wouldn't have been one. No less.
Well, not to mention, here's a thought. Every day the hotel maid comes in your room.
Absolutely.
You're going to tell me if he had all that in his room, she wouldn't have came in and saw?
Without a question. Without a question. And this is my point. So if you look at the news, the fake news articles, the manipulated mainstream, monstrosities they try and push on us. If you notice behind Sheriff, whatever his name is, Palumbo, I don't know what the hell his name is, you see the other guy standing in back of him. Now, he's got that little pin. You know what that little pin is? That little pin means he's an FBI guy. Now, on more than one occasion, it was either one or two. They have that little pin on them. They're FBI agents. You notice how sternly they're staring at the police or the sheriff as he's giving his unbelievably nervous speech and trying to calm himself, to try and follow the narrative which they themselves told him what to say without a question. It is a controlled narrative with the patsy, multiple shooters, lots of people dead, lots of people injured, and I'll guarantee you this will get no further than 9/11 did until we, the people, say enough is enough. I've had enough. I'm sick of this. I'm not going to put up with it anymore, and I'm telling you, I hate to say this, but it is going to be an armed revolution. This is what they're trying to push us to. They're trying to push this narrative so we become completely divided. For all of you listening right now, do not give in to these narratives. Do not allow them to push your no, that's not right. No, I want to use the correct words. Do not allow them to push your emotions into what they want, because this is what they're looking for, to push us into that civil war. Do not allow them to do this, because the moment we break into a civil war, they can push their narrative. You know what their narrative is? It's called the UN, with all the tanks and all the armored vehicles and all the caches of ammunition stored throughout our country. This is what they put in place. Go back about 5 years. You remember this, you guys? With all the UN vehicles on trains being stored in certain locations, trying to be covered up by Google Earth, but yet many people uncovered this stuff. This is their narrative, to come into this country and take it over. This is what it's about. They want to destroy our way of life. They want to destroy our constitutional rights. They want to take our guns away, and they want to make us slaves. Look, Germany in World War II followed the same prescription. Okay? This is exactly what happened. What happened to the Germans? What happened to the Jews? How many Jews died?
The only difference, Robert, is that they have the technology right now, and they're using weather warfare and natural disasters to, piece by piece, dismantle our country and make people lose their livelihood, their homes, and devastate them. And they're taking our country apart right now, piece by piece.
And you're right.
I'm going to call this smaller events because, and I'm talking in reference to the fires that are going on, the hurricanes, the tornadoes that they intensify, the devastation that they're causing right now with flooding, people being flooded over and over again, wanting to give up. They're trying to push these people over the edge, but I feel this is just the tip of the iceberg. We are going to eventually, when they decide that they've got enough people in disarray, they're going to pull the big event. And I think that my personal opinion on the big event is going to be they're going to set off Yellowstone and they're going to rip that New Madrid.
Well, I mean, it's pretty simple for them to set off the Yellowstone, right? Remember them talking about wanting to pour water down into the lava, or to drill a hole into one of the main cores of Yellowstone and dump a bunch of water in there. What happens when you add water and heat? There's a big explosion.
Yeah.
Okay, so they already talked about this. So you're right. That could be a very possible narrative.
Well, here's something else. Did you know that, what's that guy's name? Kim Jong Un, is that his name?
Yeah,
From North Korea?
Kim Jong Un. Yeah.
Oh, you on whatever.
It's all good.
Anyways,
It's all on.
Do you know that he has said that he's going to bury the United States in ash?
Well, I mean, those, again, from my perspective,
But, don't you think that's kind of a unique statement, ash? Is he talking about setting off Yellowstone? Is that the ash he's talking about?
No. I'll give you my perspective on it. I think Kim Jong Little Ung, who is a crazy batshit nutball, couldn't rub two sticks together to start a fire, in my personal opinion. I think these are all narratives being pushed by the global agenda, to create fear so they can start World War III. I don't think anybody's buying it. I'm certainly not buying it. There's a little thing called, what is it? What is it? I'm trying to remember the technical term. Did you see the interview when they asked Trump the other night? They keep asking him about Korea. Are you going to do this? And are you going to? He said, "Listen, this is what he said. He said, I'm not going to say what I'm going to do or what I'm not going to do. And if you want my honest opinion, we shouldn't be talking about this." And I agree. I agree
too, because it's like saying, okay, you're trying to catch a fox from getting in the hen house. Would you please give us your strategy?
Well, the problem is the foxes are guarding the hen house. This has been the problem all along. But this is what I was trying to get to, the anti-ballistic missiles. Okay, we have systems called anti-ballistic missiles, which if a missile is coming over the United States, and these have been in place a long time, they're able to track on those missiles on their heat signature and blow them out of the sky. We've known about this for a long, long time, so that's a non-issue. I think it's the powers that be who are trying to, again, create another war to keep this oligarch system going. Well, who are the oligarchs? The bankers who funnel money into the large mega corporations, right? Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Skunk Works, and all the other affiliated companies who have everything to benefit from another war. Who are the warriors, right? The warriors are the ones who create the ballistic missiles, the ones who create the ammunitions, the ones who create the rocket launchers and the propellants for the rockets, and it goes on and on and on. So we have a country that is, for the better part of 70 years, based its, supremacy on armaments. Well, who have we sold armaments to? Let's say the whole world, because Iran owns, all kinds of armaments from the United States, Pakistan, Afghanistan, all the Middle Eastern countries. As a matter of fact, how many planes, how many military jets have we sold? Yeah, a little outdated, but how many, fighter jets have we sold worldwide? Why do we have so many bases all around the world? Well, because we're the policemen of the world? No, it's to maintain control. It's all about maintaining control. No, most countries don't want any war. Most countries don't have the capital to have any kind of war. Who are the two countries that do have the capital to have a war? Russia and China. Do you see them wanting to start a war? No, not in any way, shape, or form. The most heavily, armamented countries in the world, which they have what? Nuclear weapons. Well, we're the only country that ever used a nuclear weapon against another country, which was what? Japan, right? Nagasaki and Hiroshima. We're the only country ever to detonate a nuclear weapon on another land. Only one ever happened, and most likely will never happen again, to show our superiority. And that's when this is the other part that comes into play. How did the dollar become the core central monetary system of the world? Well, we simply Mr. Henry Kissinger made a deal with the devil, right? He decided that, that wasn't just him. It was a large portion of the government says, okay, well, let's make deals with all the, oil-producing countries of the world, and we'll force them to use the dollar, called the petrodollar, so we have control over everything, right? And remember in 1971, Nixon closed the door on gold, right? No longer is gold backed by the dollar, but now it's the petrodollar. Well, we've been living off everybody's back for the better part of 50 years, and that's coming to an end. Now you have China and Russia who have, superseded the dollar, gone around the back door and said, hey, you know what? We don't need the United States to make deals with the petrodollar. We can trade gold for dollar between Russia and China, and that's what's happening right now. And now you're seeing everything fall apart. This is what's happening right now. Look at all our infrastructure. Well, at least commercially with businesses, right? You've got GM and Ford getting ready to lay off a bunch of people, right? What did Trump say? Oh, we're going to bring jobs back. We're going to bring factories back. Well, that hasn't happened. Obamacare, has that gone away? No, it's crumbling and failing on its own. But Trump being blocked, and it's not his fault, being blocked, and by who? Who had the final say-so on this was Senator McCain. Senator McCain closed the door on it, right? Now this is supposed
to. The Democratic Party does. I don't care if you people like me or not, and you know that I don't care that. They don't give a crap. Everybody thinks they're ready to help us. And I'll give you a perfect example. An article I read yesterday about every single Democratic senator just voted to cut the pensions of our veterans. They don't care about us.
No, they never gave a damn, either Republican or Democratic. It doesn't matter. It's a one-headed two-party system, and always has been. It's just the illusion that they create to make us think that we have a voice. That's the non-reality that they've created. So we have a crumbling infrastructure. We have jobs being lost by the thousands, right? Well, what was it, just today or yesterday? Sears, right, in Canada, going to be losing what? I think around 2,000, 2,500 jobs or something like that, closing around 100 stores. It's all crumbling around us. Yet the mainstream media wants to project that everything's hunky-dory and everything's fine and jobs are coming back. And in the reality of life on planet Earth is going to be just fine, when the exact opposite is happening. So here we are talking about everything we talked about within the last hour, and 90% of the people of the world are still asleep. So when this system completely collapses on it in and of itself, and this was the number one thing on their wish list, right? Eliminate 90% of the population of the planet. It says it in the Georgia Guidestones. The very first article in the Georgia Guidestones, the elites, call it the elites' constitutional law. Do not let humanity succeed over 500 million people. Well, guess what? How many people on the planet? 7.1, 7.2 billion, 7.3, I don't even know at this point. I haven't checked the figures, but it's well into the sevens. Most of the populations, I would say probably a better part of 3/4 of the population of the planet, have less than $1 a day to live on. They don't have clean drinking water. They barely have any food to eat. Whatever food they get, it's minimal. So we're really focusing on on the first world countries, which is what? The United States, Australia, Russia, which is considered first world, Europe, right? And then China's coming to its own. What about the rest of the world? Well, everybody else in the rest of the world, I guess none of those people really count. So that means an elimination of a massive amount of people. Well, how are they going to do that? Through starvation? Well, that's already happening now through starvation. What about pollution of water? Well, that's already happening now. What about all the earth changes, either created by them or either steered because they see these things coming and they say, well, we can do a little bit more damage. Let's stick it to them a little bit more, okay? So they have all these things, okay? And especially, don't let me forget this, the control of the monetary system. Who gets the money and who doesn't get the money, right? We can come in and rape your resources of your land. We can take the coal, we can take the oil, we could take the gold, we could take the silver, we could take, all your fertile planting land, and we'll give you, this worthless paper, and you'll have to accept it because at least, we're giving you something. The reality is that people don't understand is that they're allowing themselves to be manipulated by this oligarch group who controls nothing. They really control nothing. They only control things through the illusion of fear, and we have allowed them to create this illusion of fear. Why? Because they have been able to manipulate governments and able to control the governments through who? Their military factions. If we get out of line, the military is going to come in and they're going to devastate the countries. They're going to devastate the crops. They're going to kill, hundreds of thousands of people. We've seen that over and over again, haven't we? We've seen it in Afghanistan. We've seen it in Pakistan. We've seen it in Syria. We've seen it in Yemen. We've seen it all over the Middle Eastern countries. If we remember prior to that, going back into the early 1920s and 30s, that happened in the Western world, didn't it? Germany, France,
I think the main problem
Italy.
with the American citizens is that we've become naive to think that this can't happen to us or here. That kind of stuff happens overseas, but it don't happen in America. America's too powerful, too great, and if you just take off the blinders, am I right? Just take off your rose-colored glasses and take a good look at the truth and quit watching mainstream news and the liars and be in mind control with their crap. I mean, I've said this so many times. Take your power back, people.
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, hey, you guys, you want this in short order form with a good laugh? Listen to George Carlin. Go back and listen to George Carlin and throughout his career.
When he says they don't give a crap about you, you're not in the club.
That's right.
You're not in the club.
You're not in the big club. And by the way, he says that's the big club they used to shove up your ass to tell you what to eat, what to think, what to drink, what to wear. That's exactly what he was telling us. He'd been telling this for years and years. Did anybody pay attention back then? This was throughout the 90s and early 2000s into the mid-2000s. Did anybody pay attention? Nobody. Nobody paid attention. Everybody was clapping like seals. Oh, you're so right. You're so right, George. Laughing it up. All the meanwhile, he understanding the bigger problem of what the hell was really going on.
I don't want to be in their club.
Yeah, that's the last thing I want to be in, and especially for all these buffoons who believe. And I just need to say this, and I've said it in the past, but I'm going to say it again. All you fools out there who are shilling for your masters, okay, and they are your masters, you are their servants. You're Renfield, okay? They're Dracula, you're Renfield. Just remember this, okay? And they control your mind. When the blank hits the fan, okay, and it's going to do that. You don't have a golden ticket to the underground city. There's no such thing. You're the fool who's going to be left out in the cold with us. The unfortunate part is we're going to understand that you were the shills all along, and you're going to have a very bad ending. And the worst part, it's not even the bad ending, is you get to repeat this like a bunch of times. You get to do this over and over because there's something called karma, okay? You know, the whole thing, when you do something to somebody else, that's going to come back on you tenfold. That's actually very real. It's not something that somebody just made up. You buffoons out there who are saying, listen to me right now, going, yeah, that fool doesn't know what he's talking about. Ask your masters if there's an underground, seat at the table for you when everything goes sour, when it all falls apart, when the banks can't, produce any more money because nobody will take it. Ask your masters. I dare you. I really do. I really dare you, if you have the cojones, to ask your masters, your handlers, is there a seat for me somewhere in my family when this whole thing goes sour? And I will guarantee you, with a overwhelming sounding no, there will be no seat for you. But they're just telling you to enjoy your time now, because as this, this comes to a head and it gets closer and closer and closer, enjoy it, because there'll be nothing left for you. You'll have nowhere to go upstairs, because most of us know, who you are and what you're about, and there will be no rooms for you downstairs because they never made provisions for you. Sad to say, I'm sorry, but yeah, you've got a lot of repetitions to go.
Well, there's I interviewed Dr. Betty the other day with Steve, and she made a pretty good point, because I've been noticing a lot of commercials about they're trying to say that America is having a big opioid event going on, where so many people are addicted to opioids. Well, she said that it has to do with aspartame, that aspartame is interacting with the meds that are on the market, and this is why we're having so many people that are going through all these changes. It's not that, and I was thinking, yeah, how in the world could we have an overwhelming opioid event when they won't give them to you? The doctors are very, you can have enough while you're hurting, but that's it. We're going to cut you off after 2 weeks, Well,
I mean, she's got a good point, but I would add to that, so much more just beside the opioid, situation. I mean, people look at it as a pandemic or as a problem, but what about all the chemtrail spraying? What about all the chemtrail spraying that's being, poured upon our food and our water? You think that may have a larger part of this, congenitive problem that we're having with breathing, with all kinds of physical ailments? I mean, it's beyond belief, right? So we're breathing in the bad air, we're drinking the poisoned water from the, it's all from the chemical spraying, and we're ingesting the foods that are covered with this crap then all of a sudden you start to develop all kinds of problems. And aluminum oxide, which is one of the biggest proponents in the chemtrails that they spray, cause all kinds of severe damage to the body. But then let's add on top of that, let's talk about all the vaccines. Well, most of the vaccines have mercury and squalene.
Yeah.
Okay? These are poisons to the human body.
And then the fluoride, we put,
right.
they're
Exactly.
Put fluoride in their mouth twice a day, 2-3 times a day, brushing their teeth.
Exactly. So take the chemtrails, take the fluoride, take the opioids that are being prescribed by these doctors, and then take all the heavily over-medicated individuals on this planet who don't need to be heavily over-medicated but simply need a natural cure to the problems that they have. Well, doctors don't know anything. They know nothing about nutrition. The only thing doctors know is how to prescribe medicines that are spoon-fed to them by the big pharma companies. And who?
That's right.
And who allows the doctors to stay in business? Big pharma. The moment you go against big pharma, you're out of business. So, it's this rat cage, again, the whole revolving rat cage that people get themselves involved to. But you see, you got to be smarter than them. You can't let yourself be inundated and overwhelmed by the fear that these doctors and these pharmaceutical companies create, saying that if you don't take these drugs, you're not going to survive, or you're going to have more problems. When the reality is, what they're creating is more problems by creating the synthetic drugs that cure nothing and give you more problems. But people don't use their minds, and that's why I said if 90% of the planet excuse me, let me reverse that. If 1% of the planet is woken up to that, then I go back to the Georgia Guidestones, right? They say don't let the population of the humanity reach over 500 million. Well, that sure the hell makes sense if they've got us demoralized, right? Through their monetary system and through their corporations and through the pharmaceutical industry, which annihilates the human body, and then being demoralized again by your own government, and then having to deal with the fact that all the videos and the documentaries that come out about Agenda 21 and how they're going to put us in all these mega cities, and everybody else, or whoever else is left, by the way, is basically be eliminated. So we live in these little sectors of these mega populations, and then it becomes. Remember the movie Soylent Green with Charlton Heston?
Oh yes.
That's exactly.
Yes. That's exactly what we're heading towards.
That's exactly their outlook for us. So when you look at that, and you say, "My God, you get scared out of your mind." That's a time to not get scared out of your mind. Excuse me. And time to stand up and say, "No, I'm not dealing with this crap. I'm not putting up with it." So we have, again,
if we all would do that right now, they wouldn't have a chance. But they've got like 80% of the population snowballed. People are not awake to the truth. And a lot of people aren't listening to the alternative media. They think we're a bunch of conspiracy nuts, and they listen to CBS and CNN and all these programmed news medias that are, believe the man. We've got to go from the darkness to the light.
You're right.
But isn't it? Look at it this way: our birthplace is Earth. Our race is human. Our politics is freedom. Our religion is love.
That's
Period.
right. That's right. And isn't it wonderful? Isn't it wonderful? Think about this for 1 second. And you just made me think about this. So kudos to you. You made me think about this. Isn't it wonderful that they're attacking 3% of the population who's awake worldwide because they're so scared for their own lives because they've awakened people to understand that they've been completely and totally manipulated.
Well,
3%.
I must really tick them off because I don't, you know me, I don't break down very often until I can't speak anymore. I try to be as strong as I can. And I got hurt pretty badly a few nights ago. And I know you know that I took in a couple of friends that needed some help and needed a place to stay. And they're staying here with me. I took them in. And they're always up before me down here on their computers drinking coffee. And I came downstairs and you know, Jeff knew right away that something was wrong. He said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "I'll be fine." And I sat down, and even my animals knew. I sat down, I turned my computer, I said, "I just need to get a cup of coffee and read my emails." And I just broke down. I just broke down and started sobbing. And the one little girl came over here, and she put her arms around me, and she said, "I'm so sorry you're hurting." Even my dogs, they were sitting on each side of me. They put their paws around me, and Marlo was pawing at me like, "Don't cry, Mommy." But I just said, I want to just be left alone.
Right.
I don't bother anybody. Please just leave me alone.
Well, what you want is the truth and reality and all this nonsense to go away, just like all of us. And my heart goes out to you. You and I have had these conversations. I know what you've gone through, and my heart breaks for you when you go through that. But I'll tell you what, the point I was trying to get to was this, that it only took 3% of the population of the United States to defeat, our incumbents, which was the king at that time, Louis VIII, to try and take away our rights and hold us down by taxation. That all went away. It wasn't about the Boston Tea Party. It was about taxation and rule, that they were trying to rule over us when we wanted to be free. Here we find ourselves once again by the so-called global masters who are trying to rule over us once again. And it is time for us to break free. We can no longer be bound by rules and laws and religious beliefs. We have to be bound by the most important thing that we understand, freedom. Everybody on this planet wants to be free. Most people don't know how to be free. They know how to be captured by their own thoughts. They allow themselves to be enslaved by trinkets and gadgets to keep them entertained. In my opinion, that's all going to go away, because the most important thing to take away from all this, in my opinion, the most important thing away is what we are as a human species. You have to understand what you are, why you're here, and what you are here to do. Enslavement is our own bounds, our own chains that we put around our necks. We do it to ourselves. Nobody does it to us. And these so-called masters and rulers understand this. They say, "Here, have this." And we take it gleefully and say, "Oh, this is so nice and so fun. And this will entertain me for a while." And they keep giving us
Robert, that's
gadgets.
why it angers me. It angers me so terribly when I will tell somebody the truth about something and they'll come back with a response, "Well, this sounds too horrible, I don't want to hear it." Or they'll say, "I don't really care," especially when I talk about targeting. They'll say,
course.
"Well, I really don't care as long as it's not happening to me."
Of course. That's cool.
I have to shake my head because I think, are you that naive to believe that what's happening to us targeted individuals is only going to happen to us and never will be on your doorstep? Because it's people like you that don't care as long as it's not happening to you that are going to be the next victim.
Yeah, it's called cognitive dissonance, and this is the problem that people have, that they become accustomed to their jailers or to their enslavers to beating them. So when the time comes after 10 years of being beaten and enslaved, when someone comes to free them, they run to their jailers and say, I'm trying to be freed by this person. And the enslaver, the tyrant, says, don't worry, I'll protect you. Cognitive dissonance. And this is what's happening.
I go through pure hell and go through being tortured by these people because I'm enjoying it?
No,
that's not. If I were to remain silent, I'd be guilty of complicity.
Right. But that's not what I'm saying about you. I'm talking about the world as a whole.
But what I'm saying is, I've had people actually come up to me and say, well, it's your own fault. You won't shut up about what's going on.
Right, cognitive dissonance.
Even if I did shut up, which I did for a year and a half, it didn't change a darn thing.
No, it doesn't. It never does. It never does, because the tyrants become more tyrannical and the enslaved become more enslaved. It comes, that's why I brought up the story about Gandhi. There was no way that this little man was going to be enslaved any one day further. He challenged them and ruled them on every law, and he won at every level. He didn't do it through violence. He didn't do it through aggression. He did it through consciousness. He did it through his cognitive thoughts of enlightening his people to say, can't you see how enslaved you are, you have been made by these people? And he woke them up. And this is what needs to happen now. The enslavement needs to end.
So we need to stop the insanity.
Yeah.
We need to stop the insanity. They're doing the same thing over and over again, and everybody expects different results, and they're always the same result.
You're exactly right, and that's what Einstein said, What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and hoping it'll change. Well, you can hope in one hand and crap in the other and see which one you fill first. The reality is, and that's the truth. There's a great movie. I loved it. Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau and Burgess Meredith. Maybe you've seen it. Grumpy Old Men and Grumpier Old Men. The great movie.
I love those two movies.
Because they called it out. Burgess Meredith laid it out. And, I think it was Grumpy Old Men, the first one. He says you can wish in one hand and crap in the other and see which one you fill first. That was he was telling you reality, what the hell is going on, okay? Either you accept what you're being given, in other words, swallow all the crap that they keep giving you, or you do something about it. And I think we're coming to a point that it's time that we do something about it. And I'm not I'm not preaching violence, but what I am preaching is standing up and just simply saying, no, we're not going to do it anymore. I'm tired of being, overtaxed and underpaid. I'm tired of constantly losing my rights. I'm tired of these people, these so-called congressmen, politics, and by the way, poly and ticks means blood-sucking insect. That's exactly what it means. It means multiples of. Poly meaning many, and ticks being that little leech that bleeds you dry. Those are what these politicians are. Lining their pockets, encroaching on our freedoms, and implementing more and more laws to take our freedoms away and to enslave us more while they have all the benefits through their masters. And believe me, they don't understand how enslaved they are through their delusional and fictitious masters to keep giving them that worthless paper that says, I owe you, because that's all it is. It's not based on anything. It's not printed or backed by anything. And you know this as well as I do. So when that reality hits everybody, and it's called loss of faith, that's when we become free. That's the reality of freedom. But there's going to be a price to pay for it because we've let it go on for so long. So I'm just saying I'm not preaching violence of any kind, no way, shape, or form. But they continue to push us down a road of enslavement, and they're going to face harsh, harsh penalties for what they have done. And I'll leave it at that.
So I spoke to Robert Evans. I don't need to change the subject, but I need to get this out here about Robert. I spoke to Robert Evans yesterday and this morning. He has been sending me some phenomenal photographs. And he sent me one this morning from China, and there's two suns, baby. And also from Florida. He's been sending them, someone from Florida has been sending him photographs, and two suns. I'm telling you, the only thing I can say about these photographs that everybody keeps saying it's going to be in a month or 2 months, I don't think it is, because I'll give you two reasons why I don't think it is. Number one, the planet is so massively huge that you can see it still back off in the distance behind the sun, but approaching, and it's not bigger than the sun. So that tells me that it's got a ways to travel. Now, how fast is it traveling and how fast is it coming in? I don't know. I'm not an expert on this stuff. I'm just giving my own perspective on it. And
I agree with you.
The other thing is, and not saying that, we're not in for a gamut of Earth events because of it coming in, because we're already seeing these Earth events with the volcanoes coming active, the earthquakes intensifying, and also I put a link up in the chat room earlier with a video of some of the rivers are turning blood red.
Yeah, that's been going on for the last 5-6 years, by the way.
Yeah, but you know what? It used to be they were just turning blood red. Now they're thick like blood.
Wow.
Not just watery, they're thick. The one video that I put up, it looks like tomato juice. I'm telling you, it's real thickish looking.
Oh,
Very
and by
different.
the way, there was another reduction in the ocean level in Brazil. Once again, the ocean in Brazil going way out, not coming back for, again, like, I don't know, about 30 hours or so. So this is the 4th or 5th time this has happened. So now they'll come up with I'm sure they'll come up with some crazy explanation. First they tried to use the storms as an explanation. That was a bunch of nonsense. I'd like to see what their thought process is on this, and I can simply tell you that the Earth's wobble is increased, and the planet's velocity is slowed down slightly to cause this. So it is happening, and if everybody claims, or the claims that have been made, by people, I'm not going to mention names, that if we were having a pole shift 180 degrees, that's an absolute absurdity. And the reason is because the water coming out of the oceans would wash over every landmass, and we would be reduced to one-celled organisms. So that's just not possible. And the reason I know this is because of these, events happening in the past. Simply says that we are still here. Okay, human life survived. Human life survived. There had to be enough volume of humans to overcome the oceanic devastation that took place. That wouldn't have washed over all land masses. So that means that the 180-degree pole shift doesn't make any sense. But I will say this, that, if we do have a 12-degree pole shift, which is massive, 12 degrees is massive. That means inundating every coastline for about 150 to 300 miles in. Well, where do most people live? We've had this conversation before. Where do most people live? 85% of the planet lives on coastlines. there you have your massive inundation and destruction.
Well,
and it always seems like that, it's the people living within the land masses that always seem to kind of survive this and then, jot it down in rocks and then inscribing it in scrolls of, parchment paper or, sheepskin or whatever is available to them at that time.
So, are you familiar with Al Bielek?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, for those that aren't familiar that are in the chat room, Al Bielek is the man who jumped off of the Philadelphia experiment back in, in the 50s or the 40s?
It was he and his brother, actually, the two of them.
Right. And they jumped off of the Philadelphia, the ship the Philadelphia, that they were trying to use Tesla's technology to cloak the ship and make it invisible. And,
right.
and they kept that very quiet because the whole experiment went south. Let's just say it went south. And the men, the particles of their bodies and the ship interacted, and some of the men were embedded in the deck of the ship and did not survive. The ones that did survive, they did the same thing that they do to anybody who knows the truth. They committed them and told them that they would never have their freedom if they told people what really happened. But Al Bielek and his brother were being burned, and they thought the ship was on fire, so they jumped overboard. And when they jumped overboard, they must have jumped into a wormhole, and they traveled forward into the future, and they were found by the medical staff in the future, and they were taken to the hospital and treated for radiation burns. And it was when Al Bielek was in the hospital that he started noticing that things weren't quite what he thought they were. When he was watching the TV, it wasn't the same TV that they had back then. And then he started asking questions to the nurse. You can look Al Bielek up on YouTube and find his interviews. He tells the whole story. But my point is, when he was watching the news, the first thing he noticed was that the United States was not the same shape. It broke in two, and Florida was gone, most of the East Coast was gone, 2/3 of Texas was gone, and he asked the nurse, what am I looking at here? Why? This doesn't look like Europe. This doesn't look like the United States. What happened? And the nurse had told him that everything had changed, and they called it the big event. She said, after the big event. Well, and this is my point. He asked her, when did this happen? She said 2025. I started thinking about that the other day I don't think the actual event or pole shift is going to happen until 2025. That's my perspective on it. And then I started thinking about what the Bible says in the 7 years of Revelation, and this is where I think we are. I think we're coming into the 7 years where things are going to be very hard for us, and the event happens after that. What do you think about that?
I think it's as good as theory as any. I wanted to bring this up because you got me thinking. They persecuted David Meade in the mainstream media. Here we go once again.
I know they did. I interviewed David 2 days ago. With,
right?
Steve,
so,
and,
he
had no idea that he was on TMZ.
Oh, wow.
I asked him, I said, David, did you know TMZ put your picture up and said that you said the world was going to end on the 23rd? And
he never said that. That's my point.
That's exactly what I was
said
thinking.
That.
Why would they go after him like that on mainstream Channel 2 news show? And he had no idea. He said, are you talking that they put me on regular TV? I said, oh, yeah, they said that they asked you, David, why did you say the world was going to end on the 23rd? And he said, I never said that. I said it was the beginning of the end days.
That's right. That's exactly right. And they persecuted him, and it made me sick because it was both the alt and left, right and left, that did that to him. Not alt media as we are. The mainstream media, both left and right, they persecuted him. And that made me sick, which just basically tells me they're all in cahoots together. There is no right, there is no left, there is just us, and then there are those who rule us. It's that simple, guys. Get the idea out of your head that you have any kind of legal justice system, that you have any kind of, any say as a citizen. It's not happening, never going to happen. Get out of your head. It's all an illusion to make you believe that you have some sort of right or say-so. It's a joke.
Well,
it's an illusion. They've created it.
David as an example to try to get people out there that follow what's going on. Don't believe these people. They're liars. He said it was going to end. And this on TMZ, this is what they said for anyone that didn't see it. They showed David's picture, and they said, oh, yeah, and then there's this guy, David Meade, and he said the world was going to end on September 23rd. Well, guess what, David? It didn't end, and now he's changing his story and saying it's going to end on the 10th. No, he didn't say that either.
That's exactly right. That's the problem. That's the problem, Badbaby. Nobody has the ability to expand their mind more than 10 seconds of what they said.
Right.
They have the ability of a gnat in that sense. Why is it that nobody's capable of to just simply listen, comprehend, absorb, and digest the information? It's either one of two things. They don't want to, or the materialistic media, okay, the ones who are controlled by their handlers, continue that narrative because that's what they want. It's very simple. But I know that David never said that.
And what did David say? He said on those 2 dates, the alignment of the stars and the planets are going to be in front of the woman with child, and that is prophecy.
That's right.
And he kind of went over it again yesterday with us, and he said, prophecy is an ongoing thing. It isn't a one day. I prophesied this is all going to happen in one day. And,
that's right.
He kind of is on the same page as me, because he was talking about the Gregorian calendar and our regular
right, the Gregorian calendar versus the Mayan calendar, which are two different calendars. And I know that the Gregorian calendar, but basically what they did is, the church, the Catholic Church, came in and basically changed the Mayan calendar to fit their narrative. That I know.
Now, this is interesting because this is what he said the other day. They're a year different. There's a year off, right? So what I'm saying, because remember I just said to you 2025 is when I think the event. That's 8 years. Now, if there's a year difference, that would make it 7 years.
Right.
And again, here we go, 7 years of tribulation before the event happens. So, I hope I'm right. I would love to have 7 more years, even though I know they're not going to be a picnic. I'll stay.
Well, let me ask you this. Has it been a picnic up until now? For me, no. And I know for you, definitely no. So, what's the difference whether it happens tomorrow or 7 years from now? The point, I think, is that we all have to understand why we're here, the reasons we're here, to help awaken everybody to make that transitional change. Because when this event takes place, whatever it may be, okay, whatever the event it is, I don't care what the hell it is, okay, to change our destiny from the one that has been portrayed by our controllers, our masters, to be enslaved by a system of materialism, or do we change to go a different direction, saying we're all about love, we're all about communication, we're all about accepting our brothers and sisters up there who have been simply waiting for us to say, when are you kids going to put away the matches so we can come downstairs and we can all be friends? It's really that simple. And they're just sitting there waiting and watching and going, well, I hope they make it. I hope they make it. We can't interfere. But I hope we can make it.
Take off the blinders, open our eyes, and forget about all the mayhem and just be there for one another. That's
exactly.
Be there for one another.
That's all it comes down to. Loving another person, trying to help another person, the loved ones in your life. Is someone hurting? Can you do something for them? Instead of simply ignoring them and going on with your own, your own thought process, your own, your own idealism, your own materialistic. That's got to change. It's got to change. It's about caring. Excuse me. It's about caring for others. It's not about what you can do for yourself. It's about what you can do for others. That's all it comes down to. Selfishness or selflessness.
How many people label me mentally ill and crazy because I come out here and tell the truth?
Yeah,
Ask
I know.
me if I care. Ask me if I care. Because they're the ones that are trapped in the box.
Of course they are. They're like, what? You don't care about materialism? You don't want the big old truck and the house? You don't want the big boat? Well, there's something wrong with you. No, I don't think so. There's something wrong with you. Because when you start to think about other people and how they affect your life and how they affect you on the other side and how many times you're going to have to encounter those people with the contracts you're going to make and have made in the present, past, and future, and all the unresolved issues that you're going to have to deal with because of your own materialistic, point of view or your inadequacies in this life, guess what? There's a lot of repetition there. So, how do you choose to deal with it? Do you choose to deal with love and kindness and with heartfelt friendship and honesty, or do you look at it from deceit, materialism, dishonesty, and outright lies? It's really simple. You got two choices. You walk down the road of illusion, or you walk down the path of truth. It's not, it's not rocket science. But people want to turn this into. They want to turn it into their own circus. Everybody wants to turn it to his own circus. Who wants the elephants and who wants the clowns and who wants the trapeze artists, right? Well, they're all things to watch. It's all an illusion because you know that they're creating an illusion for you so you can enjoy it. Or you step outside that tent and see the people who are actually putting all the work behind the illusion and say, now I understand it is an illusion. I rather, it's kind of fun to watch it, but I'd rather be on the real side of things. I'd rather love the people and the animals and all the people who make that illusion happen, but I don't have to be part of that illusion. That's the difference. That's the difference. Don't be part of the illusion. Understand it. You can watch it, but don't be part of it. Be part of something that's more real. The conversation that you and I are having tonight, that's as real can get. There's no disdain. There's no, well, if you don't believe what I'm, saying or understand what I'm saying, well, then you're a freaking Nazi communist psychopath, right?
That's
right?
The thing I don't understand is just because I have taken my own freedom back, my freedom to think for myself and to tell the truth about what's really going on in the world, I don't fit in your box, so you want to hate me.
That's it.
I don't hate you because you're locked up in a virtual prison of virtual reality.
Of their own creation, virtual prison of their own creation, Badbaby. No, really. Virtual creation.
Hate anybody.
I don't hate anybody. I don't even hate myself, which is rare. You know, I mean, I have more things to hate myself about than most people, but I love most people most of the time until they give me a reason not to, like, you know, ego and stupidity and ignorance and people. It's a wall of stupidity and ignorance you run into most of the time, because when you start talking about truths, real truths, like we've been talking about tonight, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. They want to live in it. Even the good people. And I'm not taking anything away from these folks who are just trying to live a life. Okay. But when you live in a bubble, that's where you remain, in a bubble. You have to break out of the bubble and open your mind. So just living in a bubble and being a good person and not hurting anybody, there's nothing wrong with that. But then there's no expansion to your consciousness. You know, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. That's part of the process. That's how you learn. So, you know, how many times are you going to... You could repeat that bubble forever, I guess, but then that's where you will always be, in that bubble, never going forward or backwards. You're kind of, like you said, a prisoner of your own delusion. So how do you break out of that? You've got to think outside the box.
I used to say to people when they didn't believe me, if you could just expand your mind just a teensy bit, you might get a glimmer of light in your life.
That's exactly right. You know, Bob used to, you know, one of the things Bob used to tell, Bob Dean, you know who I'm talking about.
Uh-huh.
You know, he used to say to me, I used to say, well, you know, it seems like it's such an unattainable goal to wake people up from the illusion that they're living into the reality of what we're talking about. He says, my dear boy, and this is how he always, because he's such a gentleman. He says, my dear boy, he says, don't you understand that for each spark of light that is ignited, one more touches another spark of light that has not been ignited and then illuminates. And as this process, you know, grows, all of a sudden the darkness turns into light, and then you have illumination. And he was right in that sense, that it's not something that happens overnight, but it is a process of time and communication and enlightenment. And then for each person you touch, that spark ignites and that flame is lit, and then all of a sudden the light overwhelms the darkness. And that's where we're really at, overwhelming the darkness. The darkness has been has kind of overshadowed the light, and now it's time for the light to overshadow the darkness. And that's part of the yin and yang, you know, the Asian disc of the light and dark, where it kind of looks like, well, it actually looks like, you know, a single cell organism, where you have the white, and it's wrapped in a circle, right? And it looks like, well, I mean, you could take it as whatever you want, but one side overlaps the other, you know?
So let's give a solution. How do we overcome the darkness? How do we overcome these evildoers that are devastating our country, making people homeless, making people suffer, making people feel helpless? You don't have to take a big piece of the pie off and think you're going to conquer the world. Just, you know, you can do it in small increments. I do that myself. I see homeless people that are holding signs and saying, I'm hungry. I'll go buy some food for them and come back and say, and give it to them. Or, you know, for instance, I just took my friends in that had no place to go. I mean, I'm not, if you can do that, do that. Help someone. Just lend a helping hand to the fellow man that's suffering. That's all we have to do. Everybody did that just a little bit of time, the whole world would be a whole lot better, wouldn't it, Robert?
Well, you have no disagreement from me. I mean, the whole world, needs to wake up. We have a small percentage of people now who are starting to wake up. And as we continue to wake up, more truths will be revealed. I think all the hidden knowledge, the technology, which has been kept from us, would free all of humanity, which Dr. Stephen Greer and so many others have been, pounding on this subject forever. When you have hundreds and hundreds of military and official people coming out saying, hey, we've all been lied to, this is real, and yet, the illusion is maintained through the propaganda mainstream press, it still seems to break forward because you can't stop truth. Dr. Stephen Greer just put out the movie Unacknowledged. And, I'm not an advocate of Dr. Stephen Greer, just so everybody knows. I think what the man is doing is incredible work. I don't agree with everything he says, but what I do agree with is that it always comes from the ground up, and that's what he is doing, is from the ground up work, just like all of us. This is ground up. It's never going to come from the top down. Get it out of your head. It's never going to happen. No government on the planet is going to present a UFO, back-engineered UFO, UAP, right, and say, by the way, we've been back-engineering this technology for all of you, and we've waited 50 years to give everybody this technology on the planet so we don't have to use any more oil, no more gasoline, and no more nuclear power plants. Yeah, that'll be a cold day in hell before that happens. It always comes from the ground up. It's going to take, like Bud Rich said, an act of God to get this information forward. Well, the act of God is actually happening now because we are that act of God. God is us and we are God, if you want to look at it that way. He gave us everything that He is and what He is in order for us to expand our consciousness, to grow and become like Him and grow with Him as we expand through this universe. We're seeing it happening in front of our eyes. Now, as to the part of the homelessness, I agree with you. Do as much as you can. But the homelessness and the poverty and the injustices will never go away until these enslavement masters are done away with, because they are the ones controlling the narrative. You can give, there's the old saying, give a guy a fish and he'll eat for a day. But if you teach a guy how to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. This is what we're all about, trying to teach everybody how to fish and not give them a fish. Once they learn.
I'll give you an example. I was watching the news tonight, and they were talking about the fires in California, and there was an elderly woman that was kind of ironing in her house while she was watching the news, and she heard them talk about a man who was a steel worker, and he had no time to get anything. He barely got out, and he lost all of his equipment, all of his tools.
Right.
Her son had passed away a few years earlier. He also was a steel worker. She had all of his tools. She heard the man's name. She looked him up and had him come to her house, and she gave her son's tools to him.
Wow. Talk about a true gift.
Yeah, and he just wept. But that's what I'm talking about. Our fellow man is suffering, and if you have the ability to help, you need to step up and help.
That's exactly right.
People.
That's exactly right, and that's why I was mentioning, teach a man how to fish, and he can gather his own food forever. And that's what basically needs to come down to, is because you have a lot of people fishing for information, but they don't know what they're fishing for. We're giving them the tools to fish with. They simply have to open their minds up and say, I understand now. I understand how I've been misled by all the propaganda and the governments. I understand the manipulation. I understand the lies. Once you wake up to that, it's over for them. It's game over. There's no more governments. There's no more black budget projects. There's no more, deep, dark, secret projects. There's no more NSA. There's no more CIA, FBI, and any of that. Because they were implemented to use as tools against its own citizens. It was never for anybody else, for all these countries, because every government is afraid of its citizens. Once a government makes its citizens afraid of it, it's game over. It's game over. Are we there? I don't know. I don't think so. In my eyes, I don't think we're there. But if that were to come to pass, it would be over. I would hope, in my mind, that is the latter, that our government is afraid of us, and this is why they continue to push the implementation of the gun control and the surveillance state, because they are so afraid of the fictitious monetary system they've created that won't hold up in any other part of the world, because it's all based on fictitious faith. And the faith isn't there anymore. It's gone. It's over. They know it, and we know it. The blood has, is rushing out of the head. As if we were looking ourselves as a trauma victim, as the United States, the blood has rushed out of the head, and it's leaving the heart. The heart is almost stopped. Now it just comes down to, do we break away from it, or does it break us? That's the deal. It's real simple. So it's up to us. It's up to every single one of us to say, enough is enough. I've had it. I'm not doing this anymore. Or we get run over by the Orwellian 1984 nightmare, which everybody has been dreading.
And on that note, we've come to the end of the show already.
Already? No way.
Yes, we've got a few minutes, probably about 6 minutes, but
it felt like an hour.
I don't know who I'm going to book next week, but I'm going to talk to my brother Steve and see if we can get him to come on here and talk about what he is seeing and what's going on with him. Maybe I can get him to come out here next week and share with us.
Oh, that sounds good. That definitely sounds good.
He's never told me no before.
Well, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because he's all about, bringing the information forward, right? Sharing the information, right. Getting it out there, waking people up. And, I look forward to it. I really do. And again, however it ends up, whatever it may be, don't fear anything. There's nothing to fear. That's another illusion. It's always you know what? Get the word and thought and the idea, that the dictionary description of fear. Throw it out. Tear it out. Throw it out. There is no fear. The only fear is the one that you create.
You can do this. If I can do it, you can do it. And you know what? What I said about helping others, don't go out there and say, well, I'm going to find somebody. When it's supposed to happen, you will know it. That when that opportunity is there before you, you'll know it. Just know, oh, wow, there's someone that has been presented to me that might need a little help, and just lend that helping hand.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
I've always been attracted to the 20s. You know that.
Oh, yeah.
Tonight's bumper song, I'm going to play a little joke on you.
Okay.
Because it kind of relates to me. But anyways, I'm going to close out now, honey. Thank you so much for joining with me. Make sure you come back next week. And
I'll be here.
I'll try to get Brother Steve out here, and we'll share with everybody, update everybody what's going on.
I'm going to say good night.
I am going to close
I'm going to
out?
say good night to everybody in the chat, honey.
Okay. Thank you, brother.